Hello, viewers. Today we have with us two authors, the co authors of the book When We Thrive, Our World Thrives. So we have Connie K. Chung with us and Vishal Talreja. Welcome, Vishal, and welcome, Connie.
Thank you, Rajkumari, for giving us this opportunity to be here today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you
my
for having us.
pleasure. Yeah, that's my pleasure. So, the first question first, how did the two of you get together for the book?
So I was the associate director of the Global Education Initiative at Harvard University, and we were doing a second book in a series about how to help education systems be better prepared to enable our youth to thrive in all aspects of thriving. And we were working on a book about who are the best organizations in the world who were supporting teachers to build capacity to be able to address the needs of the whole child. And our Indian partners had nominated Dream a Dream as one of the organizations that we should look at in India to study. And so we made a trip, the whole group made a trip out to Delhi in January of, I think it was 2016. Where I met Vishal for the first time, and as he told one of the stories of the young people who are now graduates of Dream a Dream, just the aspects of that story really caught my attention. And then over the years, Vishal and I continue to meet at different conferences all over the world. And as I got to learn more about his organization and the work that he was doing, really became just thought that it was a good partnership to continue to have. And then so when I left Harvard in I think it was 2017, 2018, Vishal invited me to come visit him and his organization in Bangalore in February of 2019. And then I'll hand it over to Vishal to take it from there.
Thank you, Connie. Yeah, so we invited Connie to visit Dream a Dream because I knew having a way to engage Connie in our work will be quite inspiring and remarkable. And as she spent some time with the organization and she was sharing her own insights as she saw our work, met the young people, I thought it will be absolutely fantastic if we can actually invite Connie to write this book for us and with us. Uh, we floated the idea, and Connie loved the idea, and that's how the idea of this book came about. Initially, we were thinking just about profiling uh, a bunch of young people, graduates, and alumni from our program. But as we started spending more time on Dream and Dreams, ethos, culture, pedagogy, I think Connie really had this idea that it's not just about the stories of these young people, but really what Dream is Dream has enabled in the background through our design, through our program, through our culture. That has actually been the game changer in the lives of these young people. So the book is, while uh, personal stories of these young people, it is also about how others reading the book can learn about how to work with young people growing up with adversity. So that's how the idea came about. Rajkumari, are you there? Or did we lose you? I think we lost the host to the chat.
But I think it's still recording or it's live.
Yeah,
Well,
it's live
maybe.
somewhere.
Let's see. Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
she's back.
Now I'm there. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. We lost
Okay,
you there,
okay.
I think.
Oh, I don't know what happened. So I was asking, how much time did it take, like for the book? When did the book actually begin, and how much time did it take for you to complete it cover to cover? And more so because Connie is not in India and you were in India. How did the two of you work together on that?
Yeah, I mean, the book took, physically, it took 3 years, but I would say for both Michelle and myself, it took a lifetime, right? Because the book is based on a lifetime of our experiences working with young people that led into the book. But practically speaking, I visited Bangalore in February of 2019. And then I got to see Dream of Dreams program and meet many of the young people who are profiled in the book, and heard their stories for the first time as I was visiting. And then afterwards, we started to do more of a formal, now that I had an idea of the
Mm-hmm.
kind of materials that we would be able to use, we
Mm-hmm.
started to then construct a research plan. So I asked for 20 young people from different backgrounds, both men and women, young men and young women, so that there would be a balance. We were going to focus on the Career Connect Center, which is a big part of Dream a Dream, and also the after schools life skills program. So I asked for young people who would know how to talk about the both of them. And then as I was doing the interviews, I was doing a lot of background research and reading. So my particular story was that when I had met Vishal for the first time in 2016, I had been, I think, 2 or 3 years into fostering a young person from a background of adversity. So I was basically what they call a foster parent in the United States, where a young person has had such a trauma, adversity in their background, that they are removed from their home and then placed with another person to heal, and so the parent can heal to the point where they're either reunited back as a family, or the person is adopted by another family because reunification was not possible. So in my case, this young man was with me for 4 years before he was adopted by another family. So personally, I had gotten really into reading a lot about how do we support young people with trauma and adversity in their background. And so as I was, interviewing and meeting with young people in India, in Michelle's organization, I was continuing to do some of the research and background reading about what does the research really say about how to support young people. So again, that process was about 3 years. I probably, young people told me, I asked some questions, right, and then I drafted a kind of an outline, a first draft of their story. And then as I was writing, I had all these other questions about, well, there are, gaps missing. There are these other questions, these other details would really help. So I would throw those questions back to the team in India. So we ended up actually doing a whole second series of interviews for the whole group on video, on Zoom, on phone, via phone. In some
Okay.
cases, it required a translator, and in other cases, it didn't. But a lot of it was a second wave of interviews was done directly over the phone, and then a whole another set of questions again. Like, it took probably 8 or 9 drafts of the stories, and every single time it was because I had more questions that I
Okay.
felt like readers would want to know, and so then the team in India would feed it back to our young people, fill in the gaps, and then I would draft and redraft and redraft. So it's I think at least 8 or 9 drafts before we had a full book.
That is pretty lot of work. 8 or 9 drafts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kuni, what kind of difference did you find in people in India while you were interviewing these people? And since you're working with the similar kind of people there in US, so what about their coping mechanisms? India vis-a-vis US. Did you find any difference, or is it same for all? Like it's basically human thing and it is similar.
Yeah, I think I was struck more by the similarity than anything else, and how much of what Dream a Dream was doing was so aligned with what research had been saying. So, if you were to summarize all of the research that had
Mm,
ever been done on this population and how to support them better, and actually even all youth, not just youth from backgrounds of adversity, but youth in general, the
mm,
takeaway line is it takes a caring adult, a caring, consistent adult in a young person's life is the
Mm,
secret sauce to everything. In terms
mm,
of making improvement, of course, material supports like housing, stable housing is a key to a lot of the outcomes as well.
yeah.
Access to, educate a good education, access to good employment, access to a good supportive network are all great ingredients for everybody. But in
Mm,
particular, for people from backgrounds of adversity, research shows that a stable, steady relationship is the secret sauce. And again, and same with youth from any kind of background in order for them to thrive. It's just that the difference is because our young people from backgrounds of adversity have had a lot of trauma, they tend to
mm,
manifest behaviors that tend to repel most people from being able to be there consistently through their lifetime. So
mm,
that's what the difference is between a young person who doesn't have the background of adversity versus a young person who does. It's actually our reaction to them more than anything
yeah.
else. So we tend
Yeah.
to come in with judgment. We come in
Mm,
with, oh my gosh, you're not meeting our expectations. You're not coming to our meetings on time. You're cursing at me. You are angry with me. You're hitting me, right? You're rejecting me. You are, having all these behaviors that normally would pull most of us, a step
yeah.
back or many steps back. And so that contributes to more relational interruptions, which then contributes to more trauma, which creates to more, not healing. But
Mm,
Dream of Dreams kind of powerful stance was, regardless of the young person's behavior, we're going to be a constant presence in the young person's life. And I experienced that firsthand as a foster parent. The hardest thing was to stay, right? Stay engaged in spite of
mm,
whatever behavior was manifesting. But over the
mm,
years, those of us who were able to stay through the rough patches, know and learn
mm,
and experience the change in a young person, as you remain a steady presence. So again, I'm currently doing a lot of work with this kind of population in the United States, and our young
mm,
people who are now 8 or 9 or 10 years in the care system in the United States will say, have
mm,
said, for sure, I thought you all would give up on me. For sure, I thought that you would quit on me because of
mm,
they know what they're doing, right? They know
mm,
that what they're doing is not what's considered appropriate behavior, but they can't help
mm,
themselves. So even as they're doing it, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I know, you know, adults are going to pull away from me. They're going to give up on me. They're going to quit on me. But the young
mm,
person's biggest kind of takeaway and gratitude is around,
mm,
and yet you stayed with me in spite of what
mm.
I was doing. So that's the reward, but that's also the challenge and the difficulty. If
Yeah.
you're
So keeping
stay
on
there.
is the main thing, that you stay with the people no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vishal, tell us about this Dreamer Dream project that you have, and how did it start, and what was the trigger for doing it?
Sure, yeah. So Dream Dream is a non-profit organization based out of
Hmm.
Bangalore. Uh, we are about 22 years old, so we were started way back in 1999.
Hmm.
The work of the organization is primarily focused on helping young people from vulnerable backgrounds to
Hmm.
overcome adversity and to thrive in the 21st century. And
Hmm.
the way to do that is to invest in life skills and social emotional competencies of young people. The journey itself, 1999, I was just out of college. I had no plans to start a non-profit organization. A group of us friends got together as soon as we started our first jobs, careers, with some ideas of wanting to do more than just regular jobs. So on weekends, we
Hmm.
started volunteering with HIV positive children and cancer affected children and runaway boys. So every Saturday, Sunday, we'll go into these care homes and spend time with the children. Sometimes playing games, sometimes taking them out to picnics, sometimes just doing workshops with them. That experience was quite a defining experience for all of us. One is
Hmm.
because we realized that we ourselves came from a lot of prejudice and bias, and we didn't
Hmm.
necessarily understand the challenges that these young people were going through in the care homes and the circumstances that they were facing in life. Uh, and second is that we didn't really understand the complexity of the problem. that the problem was not just that these young people needed access to opportunities or someone to come and spend time with them. The problem was deeper. It was about these young people felt rejected. Felt
Hmm.
rejected by the society. They didn't have a sense of identity. There was deep trauma, and as they learned to trust us, they started sharing their stories with us, and we started to learn about their own life experiences and the traumas that they were growing up with. Simple things like HIV positive children wouldn't get access to a school because people in society thought that these kids will contaminate the school environment, or cancer affected children living with their families, but the families would not share these details with the neighbors because they were scared that the neighbors will ask them to leave the house. So there were so many myths and stigmas around children living in adversity. Or runaway boys were always considered to be good for nothing and will end up in prison or will end up being thieves and being violent in society. So they never really got the respect that they truly deserved as human beings. So I was going through my own personal transformation in some of these stories, and some of these young people are featured uh, in the book. Uh, and then I quit my job and joined Dream a Dream full time in 2002. And one of the first questions we asked ourselves is, how can we be useful? What is the gap that we can address? And we realized, and that time we used to work with care homes, that
Hmm.
most care homes take care of food, clothing, shelter, access to education for the children, but they don't necessarily prepare them for life outside the care home, life as an independent adult.
Hmm.
For that, these young people needed life skills. And our first learning was that uh, access to opportunities which are experiential, like play and art, consistently provided, will help these children develop the life skills that they need for life outside of a care system. And the second was, which Connie already talked about, is that one of the key differentiating factors in a young person being successful and thriving and a young person struggling is the presence of at least one caring, compassionate adult in their life. In most of our lives, it is usually our parents, maybe a teacher at school, maybe a friend, maybe a mentor that we have access to. But these young people don't have access to that. And if we can bring that into their life consistently over a long period of time, it can really become a game changer in the choices they make and how they show up in the world. So that was really where our learnings then led to designing programs and interventions around these ideas. So
So
today, yeah, sorry.
the programs are designed. Are there common programs, or they are designed depending upon the child, upon the person?
So the interventions are at three levels. One is, in Bangalore, we work with about 10,000 young people a year in the age group of 6 to 21. For the age group of 6 to 15, we run an after school life skills program. So, right from say grade 3 or 4,
Yeah.
they join a life skills program and then they continue over the years. And the program gets more complex and more challenging as they grow older. And then for the adolescents from age 14 onwards to 21, we have a Career Connect program, which is focused on helping them develop life skills to make a meaningful transition to adulthood. But the insights from these two programs over the last 20 years have been converted into now training about 35,000 educators across India on how they can bring more creativity, care, and empathy in classroom environments. And working with governments, we work with 6 state governments, reaching about 3 million children, on how they can introduce new curriculums within the education ecosystem, new pedagogical approaches, a focus on teacher training, which is focused on, again, unlocking creativity and empathy, and how do you design for whole child development. And this is highly contextualized to the state we're working in. So, for example, in Delhi and Uttarakhand, we have helped them introduce a happiness curriculum, which is focused on well-being of children.
Okay.
And in other
You
states,
working with Delhi government here?
yes, we're working with Delhi government on the happiness curriculum.
Okay. Okay. And
And Uttarakhand, who have introduced a happiness curriculum for that state. Then in Jharkhand, we are working on a whole child development program, a curriculum and teacher training model. In Telangana, we're working with the Tribal and Social Welfare Department in residential schools. And here the context is very different. Here, the challenge with children coming into these schools because of their backgrounds is the lack of self identity.
Okay.
So we have helped them design a curriculum and a teacher training process to help children build a sense of self identity, self esteem, self respect. And then in Karnataka, we work with the state on a life skills curriculum.
So, what is the response of the governments to your proposals that you give them? Are they open to it?
In the last few years, yes, because I think one is there's a clear shift in thinking, even at the level of the policymakers, that just traditional education focused on academics or numeracy literacy is not enough for children coming from adversity. The children need holistic learning opportunities. We have to look at children as whole beings and whole human beings, and we have to help them not just build their own capacities, behaviors, and attitudes, but also help them build capacities to contribute back to society and the planet. So there has been a shift in that. If you meet teachers in government schools, they're already telling us that the old linear education system is no longer serving the children. It is, in fact, increasing equity gaps.
Okay.
The national education policy that the government launched a couple of years back talks extensively on holistic learning of children, on life skills, on social emotional learning. The COVID pandemic, where schools were closed for nearly a year and a half, and when children came back and we saw the trauma that children had gone through, so the school system also realized that we just can't start with business as usual and go back to the old syllabus. We have to help children overcome this trauma, heal from this trauma, so that the school system has to be redesigned and reimagined as a space where children also get healing and get capacities to catch up to their developmental milestones. So all these factors are actually helping us. And of course, there are today hundreds of organizations across India focusing on life skills and social emotional learning, working with multiple governments. So there has been a wave of shift that has happened in the country, a move towards well-being and whole child development, which is very encouraging.
So, from among the hundreds of non-profit organizations that are working in India, how do you stand out? How do you say that you make a difference?
Oh, actually, we're not trying to stand out. We are actually saying we need to have more and more organizations designing solutions that work for every child. And if we can help in that journey, we are happy to help. So, all our learnings, our curriculums, our teacher training frameworks, as assessment tools are all open source. They're all on our website. This
Okay.
book was also an opportunity for us to share our pedagogical approaches, our frameworks with the world. So, again, this book is not just 20 stories, it's
Yeah.
really what we have learned about working with children that Connie has captured beautifully. So, we realize as Dream a Dream, as an organization, we cannot reach every child in India. And there are nearly 140 million children in India who come from poverty going into the school system. And of course, many more millions who are not even entering the school system. Uh, Now, how do we reach these 140 million? We can only reach them if more and more organizations are learning from each other, are picking up each other's best practices, are openly sharing and collaborating. So that's what we go for. What we want to do is, of course, have the highest standards of learning and insight and research, so that finally what goes to the child is not of a mediocre quality. So we are consistently investing on improving ourselves to bring the best research out, to bring the best curriculum designs, the best pedagogical approaches, the best training designs out. So we definitely want to set those benchmarks so that other organizations can also have high benchmarks. Because every child, as a human being, it will be a contributing member of society.
Hmm.
And we have to design for every child. We can't just design standardized one size fits all solutions in education,
Hmm.
which is what we have done over the last 40, 50 years, and that needs to change, which means all of us need to do it together.
Yeah. So, how many children must you have impacted in the last, say, 20 years,
About 3 million
22
kids.
years? Okay. So, how many of them are in actual touch with you? Are there people?
So, like you said, our direct work is only about 10,000 kids in Bangalore who we directly work with. So, and these 10,000 kids we track. In fact, we've been tracking them now since 2010 actively.
Okay. Okay.
So we know where each of these young people are, what they're doing,
Okay.
what struggles they have in life.
Yeah.
The other work that we do, because it's in partnership with governments, we are one layer removed from direct engagement because we're working with teachers, we're working with administrators, departments. So there we don't have tracking mechanisms.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
Okay. So, Kuni, how did you pick up 20, these 20 people?
I just went with what what a researcher would do, which is take a look at the whole of the population that Dream a Dream is serving, figuring out what the broad characteristics are. So, young people who have experienced different aspects of Dream a Dreams program, which in this case is the Life Skills After Schools Life Skills program, and also the Career Connect Center. Looking at the different backgrounds that young people come from, looking at the diversity of paths that they have chosen, whether it's to become a nail technician, or working in computer science or anything else in between, and then asking Dream a Dream to choose almost a representative sample, like who are the 20 who would best represent the whole of your population. So we have young people in the book who are fluent in English and those who are not and needed a translator. We have young people in the book who are, again, both young men and young women who've experienced both Career Connect Center and the After Schools Life Skills program. Those who come from, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, and other kinds of backgrounds who are able to kind of speak about that, because one of Dream a Dream's strengths is bring together, people from different backgrounds, different castes, different levels of society, and really teaching them how to work together and be respectful of each other. So one of the things that our young people told me was, before I came to Dream a Dream, I didn't speak to boys. And it was actually Dream a Dream that enabled a space that led me to feel safe to speak with the opposite gender, and also to be respectful of the opposite gender in the case of many of our young men, and was able to create that space. So we tried as much as possible to select the 20 who would then be able to talk about not just one aspect of Dream a Dream, but the whole of it. And so the book is, again, not just about the particular stories of the young people, but also about Dream a Dream's program, and the things that the things that they experienced, that they experienced in the culture of the organization, and so our young people were able to speak about that as well.
So 20 people who basically represent the different kinds of backgrounds,
Exactly.
each coming from different kind of background.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So those
So
who had
this
been
question,
involved. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. So the next question is to both of you. While you're working with children, they are coming from different backgrounds. They're coming from traumatic experiences. Some would be, I don't know, maybe not coming from very cohesive families. So you must be needing psychological care for them. How much of mental health issues do you face with children, people with traumas? How much of professional mental health help do you need? Vishal?
Yeah, probably I could go first and Connie can add her own experience. So we do today work with the whole team of child psychologists, clinical psychologists, child development experts. A lot of our design comes from a network of experts that we have worked with over the last 2 decades.
Okay.
Now, if you look at mental and emotional health, it's a whole spectrum. So, just to kind of unpack this whole idea of childhood adversity, the way to understand it is that in the first 10 years of life, if any child experiences lack of food or nutrition, neglect, lack of emotional love and care, extreme poverty, war situation, migration, abuse, violence, any or a combination of these factors results in what we call stunting or failure to thrive. Now, traditionally, if you look at data of around stunting and wasting in India, it primarily just looks at nutrition, access to nutrition.
Yeah.
But development, healthy development of any individual, any child, is a combination of nutrition plus emotional well-being, offered at the right time period.
Traditionally, they see the physical health.
Correct. Yeah, they just look at largely height and weight, right? But actually, there is enough research to prove that it's a combination also of emotional well-being. So, to give you an example of children achieving developmental milestones, if you have an infant in a cradle, this infant is not going to suddenly stand up and start running. This infant will learn to turn first, then learn to crawl, then learn to stand up, then learn to walk, then learn to run. Each of these are developmental milestones, and we all know that there's a certain age when all children pick up these milestones. There are these months when children pick up milestones. Similarly with languages. Today, if you ask me to learn a new language, I will struggle with it. But at the age of 3, 4, 5, if you introduce even 5 languages to a child, the child picks it up very quickly because the brain
Okay.
is wired for picking up word associations, language associations. Now, imagine the same child growing up in a slum, in a one room house, where both the parents are going to work, and this child has been taken care of, this infant of, say, 2, 3 years, has been taken care of by an 8 year old. Uh, this child does not have anyone who's conversing with them on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, which means they're not picking up language skills, which means their brain is not making associations and not making those neural connections. So they're not only having language impairment, but because the brain is not making associations, other development is also impaired.
Right.
Same with emotions. Now, if you look at behavioral challenges, if you walk into a shelter home today, which takes care of, say, orphan children, you walk in for the first time, and these children will come running up to you. They'll hug you, they'll touch you, they'll climb on you, they'll ask you who they are. And you'll feel great because these children are so happy and friendly and they make friends so easily. But if I had to come to your house for the first time as a stranger, and if you had a 10-year-old in your house, your daughter or son is not going to come running up to me. They're not going to come
Yeah.
hug me. They're going to hide behind you. They're going to peek. And only when they get an indication from you and you say, Chalo, aage aao, hello, bolo, they'll come, they say hello, and they quickly run away.
Yeah.
Now, this is healthy behavior, right? But children who are growing up in a care home where, there are 60 children with one caregiver, they're not picking up healthy behaviors. And they're looking for attention. They're looking for love and care. Now, if you extrapolate that to the age of 18, 19, and because they've had this confused development and confused relationship, this could lead to them ending up in domestic abuse relationships or violent relationships because they've not learned to build boundaries. So they might not necessarily have core mental health challenges, but they will have these behavioral challenges because they are not achieved developmental milestones physically, mentally, and emotionally. And what
Yeah.
research has taught us, and our own experience has taught us working with these children, that when you bring in one caring adult, at least one caring adult, if there are more, it works better, but at least one caring, compassionate adult in their life who does not judge them, who trusts them, who brings care, who brings empathy, who brings non judgmental approach into their life. Second, if you give them access to consistent positive learning experiences using play, using art. Third, if you create experiences for them which are deeply transformative, which helps them shift what they believe about themselves, because the whole community around them is telling them you're useless, you're good for nothing, you're only going to get married and cook in a kitchen. If you shift those belief systems to transformative experiences where they start believing I'm creative, I'm powerful, I have an identity, I own my story, A combination of these is what helps them catch up to developmental milestones, physically, emotionally, and mentally. So that means they will not have mental health challenges.
Okay.
Of course, there are some children who have had such severe traumatic experiences, especially in case of abuse and violence, that then you do need expert help. So then you need to bring in mental health experts. You need to bring in psychologists. So we do have access to that, but that's typically about just 1% of the population.
Okay.
The remaining 99 of the population, if you could just give them access to a foster parent like Connie has been doing, a mentor, a facilitator, a youth worker, who brings these qualities of care and empathy, they will heal out of their trauma and they will catch up to their developmental milestones. And the opportunity here is we've got millions of teachers today in the school education system who can play that role, but they're
Do
not playing that.
they?
They're not playing that role today. Today they
Yeah.
are just being deliverers of knowledge. But that's the opportunity. If we can shift their thinking and say, today the children that are coming into your classroom were largely first generation schoolgoers who are coming with these developmental gaps, and just approaching them from a space of care, empathy, being non-judgmental can be a
Yeah.
game changer for them. Teachers will shift, and that's what we are attempting to do.
Okay. Okay. And Connie, your take on that?
Yeah, I think everything that Vishal said, but I will supplement with a quote from somebody who's done research on this, and it's a man named Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a child psychiatrist, and he says, what we're learning is that having access to a number of invested, caring people is actually a better predictor of good outcomes following trauma than having access to a therapist. And this is something
Okay.
that I quote in the book in the introduction. Again, because Dream a Dream's secret sauce is that they were able to, deliver this kind of healing activities and principles to a wide number of young people instead of, matching them one on one with a therapist. And it's because the program was constructed with with the help of a couple of clinical psychologists from the UK. Fiona and David, doctors Fiona and David, and so it's embedded into what they're doing. So I'll read you another quote from Dr. Bruce Perry about a quote that again illustrates why Dream of Dreams programming on life skills development is so helpful, because it's grounded in the creative arts and soccer or football in this case, right? And so the quote reads something like this: schools tend to minimize powerful healing and resilience building activities like sports, music, and art. These are often viewed as an elective or enrichment activities, when in fact they can be the very bedrock of academic learning, thanks to their regulatory and relational elements. Patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity makes the overactive and overly reactive core regulatory networks get back in balance. Music falls into this category, both playing and listening. All sports involve doses of it too. Dance too. And of course, each of these activities also has very important relational elements. You learn when to pass the ball to your teammates. You learn how to move with your dance partner. You synchronize playing your violin with other members of the orchestra. Finally, there are cognitive elements to sports, music, and other arts. They engage, activate, and synchronize activity throughout the brain from the bottom up and from the top down. These are whole brain healthy activities. So, one of the things back in the United States, in the state of California, what our young people from our foster care system are trying to do is pass a bill for our legislature that would support access to extracurricular activities for young people like themselves, because of their own experiences and research like this that shows that actually these extracurricular activities that are centered around music and art and sports should be like foundational, like literacy and numeracy, right? Are these days. So it really should be the thing that even goes before numeracy and literacy, I would argue. And again, a lot of our neighbors in other countries, like Finland and other countries, invest a lot in early childhood education. That's about play.
Okay.
It's not about necessarily, learning the numbers and letters. It's about playing
Yeah.
all together that introduces these concepts to our young people. And then that's the bedrock on which, as they go to school and learn academics, they can do better because they learn how to, work with others, listen to the teacher, cooperate with their classmates, self-regulate
Yeah.
themselves to calm themselves down enough to be able to learn, letters and numbers. So this,
Literacy can come later on.
yeah, so this is
Yeah.
the thing that makes
Yeah.
Dream a Dream special, but also the thing that shouldn't be special. As Michelle said, this should be something that everybody is doing across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there any, among all the people you've worked, is there any particular case study that you would like to talk about? Something exceptional, some exceptional story? I know you will say that all your children are exceptional. Everybody has a special story, but I'm sure there must be a few stories which are more exceptional than others, more special than others.
Connie, you want to go first? Okay. Uh, yeah, of course. I mean, all these stories are special, and these are just 20, and there are hundreds, right, every day.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll tell you, uh, many of the young people featured in the story, and as you will see, read at the end of the book, we kind of said, and afterward, these young people are still on their journeys of thriving. Again, life is not linear. Right? Life has its ups and downs. We all go through our ups and downs. And what these young people have learned over the years, having a caring, compassionate adult, is that they've learned resilience and they've learned not to give up. Uh, one of the young men featured in the book who grew up in a care home, he ran away from home when he was very, very young, then grew up in a boys' care home. Uh, and I met him when he had just turned 18. I met him at a marathon that he was running. And I asked him what his future plans was, and he said he's looking for a job. So I said, why don't you come meet us at office? And he came and met us, and he started working with us as a facilitator. And today he's a trainer with teachers and educators. He, in fact,
Okay.
designs curriculums for governments. And he's barely finished college. But one of the things he struggled with, and there are many pieces of his story in the book, uh, was that he came to me once and he said, I don't know how to find a life partner.
Okay.
uh, and I was like, that's interesting, because that's also a part of a life journey. And here I have grown up in a boys shelter home. I haven't built skills to engage in a conversation with the opposite gender, or discover who I like and why I like them, and how do I open a conversation with them. I would like a family of my own. And he was turning 28 then. But I don't know how to find a life partner. And where do I find a life partner? And who will choose me? Because I'm a Dalit. I come from a lower caste background, and I've grown up in a shelter. So I don't have an identity in that sense. So in spite of all his achievements, he's been a national level swimmer. He's been a facilitator. He's been a trainer. He's working with governments today, training teachers and adults, designing curriculums. In spite of all those achievements, and his own sense of self identity was strong, he didn't think there's someone out there who might actually like him for who he is, because of
Yeah.
all these other labels the society throws. Uh, Now, of course, he's 2 years after that, he did find the love of his life. He got married last year. In fact, he celebrated his first wedding anniversary yesterday.
Okay.
Uh, and he celebrated by buying a bike for his wife. But this is thriving, right? I mean, 2 years
Yeah.
back, struggling with this aspect of thriving, and 2 years later, today he's kind of fulfilled that aspect of
Yeah.
thriving. And maybe in the future there might be other challenges that life throws at him. But what he has today is the life skills to reflect on these challenges and find a way to respond to them.
Yeah.
And I
True.
think that's really the power of change that we need. Not just that these kids grow up, finish college, and get a job. It's more than
Yeah.
that, because life is a
More
lot
than.
more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. True. So, Connie, you would like to say something on that?
Yeah, and I'll again go back to kind of quoting from one of our young people, who in this is the first chapter of the stories that we tell, and it comes at the end, and it's the thing that I think, for me, is the core message that I want people to take away from the book. And it's this quote: "People in my community think that children from vulnerable backgrounds can't achieve anything. They treat us with suspicion and distance and believe we can't do anything. Mainly, I wanted to show that my mother, father, brother have dignity. I want to be an example for other children from adverse backgrounds." And this is a young man, according to the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale, out of 10 adversities, kinds of adversities that you can have, I think he had like 8 or 9 of them. You know,
Yeah.
experienced them when he grew up, and now he is thriving. He's married. He has a child. He has like multiple degrees, big dreams. Is working to achieve. But at the core of it, when we asked our young people, why do you want to share your story? Because, while it might have positive things, it might also have negative impacts. They continually came back with the theme that Prasanna, this young man, says in the book, which is, it's because we want to dispel the negative stereotypes and expectations, the low expectations that people have once they, know that, young person has come from a background of adversity. And it's been my lifetime's experience. So I've been almost 30 years, as an educator, as a researcher, as a foster parent, just working with young people. It's this theme over and over again. It's us more who are more the problem, than
Yeah.
the young people.
True.
They're capable of doing anything, and
Yeah.
everything. So I have my former students, who are, one of them is one of 6 people in the entire planet who can go to Antarctica and, help solve,
Okay.
fix a satellite that has come down from the sky and landed in Antarctica. Another one is regularly quoted in national, newspapers and journals whenever there's a study about the importance of sleep for athletes, because she's become a medical doctor who specializes, in that kind of care. Another runs a whole team for Google. Another one is the VP of, creative director, for one of the best, biggest, well-known studios, Hollywood studios in the United States. And so my students, who were my students, 17, 20 years ago back, are currently, playing big roles in society. And so too are Dream a Dream graduates. And that's the message that we want to send with the book, is that regardless of a young person's background, through these stories, please know that these young people are capable of doing anything and everything that they're capable of dreaming about. And so our job as supporters is to come alongside of them and enable them and support them in dreaming big dreams, but then also give them the supports that they need to realize and live out those dreams. Even if it's not, something professional, but something very profound, like my life partner, as Vishal just described. But it's
Yeah.
coming alongside of them, being a safe place where they can even share with us those kinds of, vulnerable dreams, that they might have, and then being able to just listen, and be with them in their journey, to realize those dreams. So again, there's 20 stories in the book that really show that, and our readers have given and come back to us, with reviews that are primarily actually about, hey, I was down, and then I read this book, and read these stories, and realized, there I can do more. We can do more. So
Yeah.
that's
That's quite heartening. That means that your purpose is being served.
yeah. We hope.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you wrote the book, did you have any target audience in mind that you want to approach this particular section, or it's for everyone out there?
Yeah, and Vishal could speak about this too. But for me, primarily the audience that I was looking to were other young people, who would be inspired by these stories, and people like educators and youth workers who are in direct contact with our young people. Because again, most of us, even as teachers, we only have direct contact with our youth for a few years. And it takes several years for the things that we had invested in them to really come alive. And one of the questions that I asked in my interviews with our young people was, what is it that you remember about your experience with Dream a Dream 5, 10, 12 years back when you were in their program, that you still remember right? Even to this day, and that has helped you. And again, the young people align right along with the findings from research, which is it was the powerful relationships, it was the safe space where I could, actually voice my thoughts for the first time, because other spaces, whether it was at home or school, nobody really asked me what I was thinking or feeling. And again, this is not just for children with backgrounds of adversity. I taught at Harvard, and I had graduate students in a research methods class where I had students design their own research. And for many of them, because of their, in this case, their particular cultural backgrounds, which did not really ask them, what are you interested in, what are you good at, they really had to be coached through that, in addition to the research methods. And so again, I don't think it's necessarily particular to the youth with backgrounds of adversity, but any youth, even backgrounds of material privilege, who may not have been asked and given space to explore, what am I interested in? What are my own dreams versus my parents' dreams or my teacher's dreams or society's dreams of, what I should be doing? What are the things that I want to do? And unless you create or recreate that space for young people, it's more challenging for them to arrive at those answers.
Yeah. Vishal, you would want to say something?
Uh, I think anyone who's a parent, for me, anyone who's a parent, who's planning to be a parent, who's planning to bring up a kid of their own or adopted or foster, uh, this book is so critical in helping us understand our role as adults in a young person's life. Uh, so, yeah, anyone who's interested in helping young people thrive, this is a book for them.
Okay. Okay. And one last question. Do we expect a sequel coming? Because as you said, there are many stories. So 20 is just a little, just a small portion of it. So do we expect more stories?
I think that if Connie is interested, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to see a book where it's the young people who are writing their own stories. So the next version, iteration of this would be to release, and maybe it's not a book, maybe it's videos, maybe it's other podcasts. But again, young people telling their stories through visual means or through their own writing or their own poetry, I think is super powerful. And so I would love to see a book where young people are speaking directly, even more directly, to their audience.
Okay. Okay, Vishal, I'll ask one question, which is you may want to not answer it,
Okay.
but you're allowed to do that. But I'll still ask. Uh, you have self-published this book.
Yeah.
What about the publishers, like the big names? Did you not approach them, or did they not take you seriously or kindly?
Uh, Actually, it was my team that handled it. So, I mean, this is the first book, so we don't understand publishing, so we didn't necessarily have an agent who was reaching out to publishers. Uh, so, one is we wanted to have control over pricing the book, so it can reach more and more people. Second, we wanted a publisher who kind of understands the ethos and the values behind the book. That is really young people's voices, where Connie is just really bringing young people's voices, but it's their voice. So we wanted some freedom around how these voices and stories are represented. So after much consideration, it just seemed right to
Okay.
self-publish it,
Okay.
because we wanted the product to be in a certain way. And Connie can probably add more. But that was
No,
at least
because
I
why
think.
I'm asking is because big publishers, they'll take care of your marketing and other things also, publicity things also. Right
Yeah,
now, self-publishing a book, that takes
a lot
a
more
lot of
effort.
toil.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah.
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 So,
I'll
Connie,
add a little bit more
anything?
on that because I've done both kind of publishing through the formal channels and then also self-publishing before this book came out. And I would say that the book is unique because most publishers either, they have arms that have different categories. So this is either a research book or it's a book for a general audience. And it
Okay.
speaks to the uniqueness of the project that we took on, that where it has, research that makes it a little bit more, less of a thing for a general audience, but then it also has stories, which is less of a thing for, an academic publisher, or a research publisher. So we really aimed at a segment of the market, or a kind of a book that, for which I don't know that there a publisher exists, actually. So
Yeah.
that was one of the challenges, that we ran into. Is it was one of those like straddling, multiple markets and multiple audiences. And so we had, I think it was not your traditional, research book. It was not your traditional, like, general mass market paper book either. It's a very particular audience of youth from backgrounds of adversity. So I think that was one of the challenges. And then number two, exactly as Vishal said, I've done academic publishing, and the books go at a rate in the United States of, 30, 40, $50 a book. And we knew that that's not the part of the audience and people that wanted to read the book. It really
Yeah.
needed to be accessible. And then when the book actually came out, I also had doubts about, maybe we should have gone with a traditional, publisher. But then when the book actually came out and I saw the layout, and I saw what a beautiful job that Notion Press had done in, again, adding pictures to a book, again, brings up the cost a lot if we were in the business of trying to make money off of a book. But we as authors said, we want the price to be as low as possible. And so we were able to, as self-publishers, adjust the price of the book, so that it's the intent, which is to get it to as many young people, and people in India as possible. So that's what was it just kind of reaffirmed when I saw the book and how it was laid out, and the power of the photographs, and the power of, even the print is large. And again, publishers trying to
Yeah.
maximize profit would have shrunk the font, right? Would have made, as few pages as possible, gotten rid of our pictures, and just done a lot of things that, we were able to have control over. So at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion, I don't think traditional publishing was an option for us. Actually, we looked at it. I actually think we spent a lot of time doing that, when I don't think currently there is a traditional publisher who's able to do this kind of a book, except for, I would say, probably children's publishers. I now see my niece's books where they're in full color. So I'm like, I want to know how they do that. But aside from children's publishers who are, good at and all know the value of incorporating visual elements, and all these kind of more creative aspects of it, your traditional publisher, you know, just couldn't.
They they have their
So,
own set of ideas and set of rules to about a book.
say that again.
I said they traditional publishers, they have their own set of ideas and about a book, and they'll fit your book into that slot.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, we did something that I think was pretty creative, and kind of
Yeah,
groundbreaking in its own way, which
yeah,
was to marry the research with the personal stories. We have little boxes again that are kind of non-traditional, and then we have
yeah.
photographs, and the book is laid out again in a way that surpassed my expectations. In terms of even this, again, the size of the font, I cannot emphasize to you how much easier it is to read a book that has a
True.
larger font.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just came, especially when I saw the book in print, it was just affirmed to myself, this is probably the only way that we would have
Okay.
wanted to publish the book, for it to look the way that we wanted it to look.
Okay. Okay. So that ends all my questions. Thank you so much, Connie, for being here. Thank you so much, Vishal. And I wish you all the best, and I wish you much more work. And you improve many more lives, and all the best. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Rajkumari. It was such an honor and pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.